Welcome. Today, we're traveling deep into the heart of America. Not for the sights, but to explore the states where the American dream feels most out of reach for immigrants. We'll look beyond laws and policies to the real lives and struggles of families and communities shaped by these challenges. Let's begin our journey into the states that present the toughest landscapes for immigrants in the U.S. Our journey starts in Alabama, a state steeped in history and tradition, but also one that has been at the forefront of some of the most controversial immigration policies in the United States. Here, in the heart of the Deep South, we find the story of HB 56, arguably one of the harshest immigration laws in U.S. history. This legislation cast a long shadow, impacting countless lives and reshaping the social fabric of the state. Passed in 2011, this law went to extreme lengths, even criminalizing seemingly innocuous acts like giving rides to undocumented immigrants. Imagine the chilling effect this had on everyday interactions. Furthermore, HB 56 forced schools to check students' immigration status, creating an environment of fear and uncertainty for children and their families. Education, a fundamental right, became entangled with immigration enforcement. The law also empowered police officers to demand papers from anyone they had reasonable suspicion to believe was undocumented. This provision opened the door to potential profiling and discrimination, eroding trust between law enforcement and the community. The result was palpable. Fear and mistrust spread like wildfire throughout Alabama's communities. People became afraid to interact, unsure of who they could trust. Families hid in the shadows, afraid of deportation and separation. The law created a climate of constant anxiety and vulnerability, and communities fractured along lines of immigration status, tearing apart the social fabric that had once held them together. The sense of unity and belonging was shattered. Crops rotted in the fields as agricultural workers, fearing deportation, vanished overnight. The state's agricultural industry, heavily reliant on immigrant labor, suffered a devastating blow. This situation vividly showed how these laws hurt not just immigrants, but the entire state economy, impacting businesses, consumers, and the overall prosperity of Alabama. Even after courts stepped in and blocked parts of HB 56, deeming them unconstitutional, the damage was already done. The scars of the law remained deeply etched in the state's collective memory. Alabama's reputation as unwelcoming lingered, casting a long shadow over the state and hindering its ability to attract new residents and businesses. The message was clear. For many, Alabama became a place to avoid, a state where they felt unwelcome and unsafe. People voted with their feet, leaving the state in search of more welcoming communities. This is a powerful and cautionary example of how state policy, driven by fear and prejudice, can turn daily life into a constant struggle for dignity and basic human rights. The scars of HB 56 remain visible today, a reminder of the devastating consequences of discriminatory legislation. This law continues shaping the lives of immigrants and the state itself, influencing social dynamics, economic opportunities, and the overall perception of Alabama. Alabama's story serves as a stark warning of how fear-driven laws can haunt a community long after the headlines fade, leaving a legacy of division and mistrust. Next, we head to Arizona, the epicenter of America's immigration debate. Arizona's SB 1070, the Show Me Your Papers law, made police check immigration status during stops, fueling racial profiling and fear. Trust between law enforcement and immigrant communities collapsed. People became afraid to report crimes or seek help. Sheriff Joe Arpaio's notorious tactics further targeted and humiliated Latino communities. Though courts struck down parts of SB 1070, its legacy persists. Generations have grown up under the shadow of aggressive enforcement. Arizona's name still evokes anxiety for many immigrants. It's a stark reminder of how policy can define a state's identity and leave lasting wounds. In Georgia, HB 87 emerged as a legislative response to growing concerns about immigration, mirroring the harsh and restrictive laws already enacted in states like Alabama and Arizona. These laws aimed to crack down on undocumented immigrants, but their impact extended far beyond the intended targets. The Georgia law turned routine police stops into high-stakes encounters for immigrants, creating an environment of fear and uncertainty. What was once a simple traffic violation could now lead to detention and deportation proceedings. The law also criminalized the act of helping undocumented immigrants, effectively shutting down support networks and creating a climate of suspicion. Even providing basic necessities could be construed as a criminal act. This had the effect of isolating them from support networks and making daily life risky, as individuals became afraid to seek help or offer assistance. The law cast a long shadow, impacting every aspect of their lives. Farmers, particularly in the agricultural sector, faced severe labor shortages as workers fled the state, fearing deportation and harassment. The backbone of Georgia's agricultural economy was suddenly under threat. This resulted in millions of dollars in lost crops, as fields went unharvested and produce rotted on the trees. The economic consequences were far-reaching and devastating. The economic fallout served as a stark reminder of how deeply immigrants are woven into the state's economic and social fabric, contributing significantly to various industries and communities. Over time, courts have softened some of the harsher provisions of HB 87, recognizing the potential for abuse and unintended consequences. But despite these legal challenges and modifications, the underlying message remains: Georgia is a place of uncertainty and potential hostility for immigrants. The law built barriers not just in policy and legislation, creating bureaucratic hurdles and legal obstacles, but also in people's hearts and minds, fostering division and mistrust within communities. For many immigrants, Georgia became a place to simply survive, struggling to make ends meet and living in constant fear, rather than a place to thrive and build a future. These laws have real and profound human consequences, impacting individuals, families, and communities in countless ways. The effects ripple through families and communities, disrupting lives and undermining the social fabric of the state. Georgia's story serves as a cautionary lesson in how well-intentioned policies can backfire, ultimately hurting everyone involved and undermining the very values they were intended to uphold. In Mississippi, the challenge isn't aggressive laws but a lack of support. Immigrants face scarce legal aid, limited health care, and underfunded schools with few language resources. Strict laws make it nearly impossible for undocumented immigrants to get driver's licenses, turning daily tasks into logistical nightmares. The absence of a safety net leaves families to navigate complex systems alone. For immigrants, this quiet neglect is as daunting as overt hostility. Mississippi's struggle is one of invisibility, being left out rather than pushed out. Building a new life here means facing barriers at every turn, often in silence. It's a silent struggle, but a struggle nonetheless. South Carolina followed its neighbors with S.20, a law echoing Arizona's "Show Me Your Papers" approach. Police were required to check immigration status, and a new enforcement unit was created, deepening fear in immigrant communities. The law criminalized basic acts of kindness like giving someone a ride. Immigrant families became isolated, afraid to seek help or send kids to school. Supporters claimed it was about law and order, but for many, it felt like exclusion. Legal challenges softened the law, but its legacy endures. South Carolina's reputation as unwelcoming persists, making it a tough place for immigrants to call home. Discrimination flourished under the guise of enforcement. The memory of S.20 still shapes life for many in the state. Back in 2007, Oklahoma took a significant step in shaping its approach to immigration. House Bill 1804, known as HB 1804, was passed, marking it as one of the first sweeping state immigration laws in the nation. This legislation set a precedent for how Oklahoma would address immigration issues in the years to come. It went beyond simple regulation, criminalizing the act of assisting undocumented immigrants in any capacity. This provision had a chilling effect, impacting families and communities. Furthermore, the law denied access to public benefits for undocumented immigrants and created significant barriers to obtaining state identification or a driver's license. These restrictions severely limited their ability to integrate into society and participate in daily life. In a state like Oklahoma, where public transportation options are limited, particularly in rural areas, this created a situation where people were forced to risk driving illegally simply to meet their basic needs and survive. The law inadvertently pushed individuals into a precarious situation. The implementation of HB 1804 had a disruptive effect on key industries, such as construction and various service sectors. This led to significant labor shortages and consequently, substantial economic losses across the state. Businesses struggled to find workers, impacting their ability to operate efficiently. The climate of fear and uncertainty prompted many workers to leave the state, seeking opportunities elsewhere. This exodus had a ripple effect, negatively impacting the broader community and contributing to a sense of decline in some areas. More than a decade later, Oklahoma's tough stance on immigration, initially established by HB 1804, largely remains in place. For immigrants living in Oklahoma, these restrictive laws, coupled with a lack of comprehensive support systems, continue to make the process of building a stable and secure life in the state especially challenging. The state's enforcement-first approach to immigration has had lasting consequences, shaping the lives of countless individuals and families. Oklahoma's story serves as a powerful example of how early and aggressive immigration laws can profoundly shape a state's identity and its social and economic landscape for many years to come. Indiana, the crossroads of America, is full of barriers for immigrants. Laws passed in 2011 let police question immigration status and invalidated consular IDs, making daily life difficult. Undocumented students are barred from in-state tuition, putting college out of reach. No driver's licenses means limited job access and healthcare access, and constant fear of police stops. Indiana's policies keep immigrants in the shadows, even if they've lived here for years. The state's message: you can work, but you can't belong. For families, Indiana is a tough crossroad to navigate. The barriers here are both legal and deeply personal. Missouri's approach is clear: strict enforcement and little room for local flexibility. Laws require e-verify for public employers and police to check immigration status during arrests. The state bans sanctuary policies, forcing cities to cooperate with federal immigration authorities. This top-down control prevents local leaders from building trust with immigrant communities. Immigrants fear any police contact, making everyone less safe. Missouri's legal framework is consistently unwelcoming. For immigrants, the state's message is unmistakable. Opportunity is limited, and enforcement is the rule. It's a tough reality in the show-me state. Nebraska's economy relies on immigrant labor, especially in meatpacking, but its laws create major barriers. Undocumented immigrants can't get driver's licenses, making daily life in a rural state nearly impossible. Access to public benefits is tightly restricted even for mixed-status families. Communities around meatpacking plants are under-resourced, with crowded schools and stretched services. There's a disconnect. The state needs immigrant labor but doesn't invest in supporting these workers. Nebraska's policies keep immigrants on the margins, needed but not welcomed. The contradiction is clear: labor is valued, but lives are not. For many, Nebraska is a place of opportunity and exclusion, all at once. Tennessee has some of the nation's strictest anti-sanctuary and anti-immigrant laws. Local governments must cooperate with federal immigration enforcement or risk losing funding. Laws block undocumented immigrants from public benefits and business licenses, stifling economic opportunity. No driver's licenses and limited public transit isolate immigrant communities. Political rhetoric adds to a climate of fear and suspicion. Tennessee's message is clear: legal obstacles and suspicion await at every turn. Building a secure future here is an uphill battle for immigrants. Our journey ends, but the stories continue. These laws aren't just headlines. They shape daily life for families seeking safety and opportunity. Understanding these struggles is the first step toward a more compassionate world. If these stories resonate, subscribe for more journeys and insights. Thank you for watching. See you on the next journey.